In 1943, he left the Stovall plantation in Mississippi and arrived in Chicago. Just one in a sea of millions of African Americans heading north, looking for a better life. McKinley Morganfield, better known as Muddy Waters, took a gift from his uncle, an electric guitar, and created something new. He plugged in, switched on, and was the leading pioneer of a whole new amplified sound. It was a siren in the concrete cliffs of the Windy City, drawing both emulators and fans, a magnetic pull that continues to this very day. The evolution of the Chicago blues became both a journey and a destination.
The blues came to Chicago and got electrified. Chester and McKinley, they took us for a ride when the blues came to Chicago and got electrified. Well, sooner or later, we all got satisfied.
The Chicago sound is the blues that spread around the world. It was the music of farmers come up from the deep south, but amplified and electrified. They plugged in, they ramped up, it was irresistible. But that sound, that blues, didn't happen in a vacuum. Sound never does. Sound happens in a place. Music happens in a place, created by people. And the Chicago sound is as much about the place and the people as it is about the notes. This place? This is Norfolk, Virginia. More Navy blues than musical blues, and a long ways from Chicago. But Norfolk is the beginning of a long journey that took this lady, Jackie Scott, away from her home and her grandchildren. At a time of life when most people are getting ready for retirement, Jackie made a decision to leave her family behind and build a career that seemed in total conflict with her deep commitment to her church.
My son was leaving to go away to college. And, you kind of think of, you don't want to be a couch potato. You have to do something, have a hobby. And for me, it's really always been singing. And so outside of gospel, I've always liked blues.
As far as Jackie was concerned, there was only one place to find the real blues sound: Chicago. And like the Delta musicians from 60 years earlier, guys like Muddy Waters, Jackie packed her bag and headed north. For her, the trip to Chicago could only be called a religious experience, reinforced by watching the quintessential Chicago blues guitarist, Buddy Guy.
When I went to see Buddy Guy, and he came out on stage and he hit that guitar, and it was just such intensity that I knew that was it. It was just a matter of convincing myself, that if you're gonna do it, you're gonna have to go both feet. Don't go dibbling and dabbling.
That ascended up above all.
The only possible conflict was her church. After all, she was going from Sunday morning to Saturday night. She'd be singing the devil's music.
I had an uncle that said, well, you can't serve two masters. Gotta be one or the other. You can't serve Jesus and the devil. That's what it boils down to, That's sort of their thinking, and a lot of people feel that way. I wouldn't say I completely struggle with it, but I pondered it real hard.
Perhaps you came in looking for answers this morning. Perhaps you.
Jackie came to me and she said that she had felt this pulling or this tugging to sing the blues.
You don't need to have a casual relationship with church. This is serious business.
And so, I thought about it. This was God's doing. And whatever was going to take place, it was going to happen whether I gave her my blessing or not.
the grandmother from Virginia started making trips to the Windy City, dropping in on clubs, leaving her card, asking for a chance to learn. She impressed enough people that she eventually met a new friend, Eddie Shaw, former saxophone sideman for Howlin' Wolf and arranger for Muddy Waters. Eddie was so impressed with her abilities that together they ended up producing a CD featuring songs written by Eddie.
She booked a few gigs. Eddie, look, I got a thing that you can do on the coast. I can put together for you, Eddie, where you can make a buck. I don't want to deal with that, Jack. It ain't gonna work. She said, oh, it'll work. And 10 times out of 10, it works for her. And I ain't got nothing but the most respect for Jackie, you know. Anything she want me to do, I most agree to do it. Because I know if she put her mind to it, it's gonna be a success.
So when I went to Chicago, it was close to my roots, which was gospel. And it was played in an intensity, a rawness that just kind of grab you, you know? And I think that's what I was, basically what I was kind of looking for, the feel that I was looking for. So that kind of what took me to Chicago.
The history of the Chicago blues is filled with performers who uprooted their lives and left everything behind. But unlike 60 years ago, these days, someone like Jackie doesn't have to forsake her church or her family. She commutes between home and Chicago. 60 or 70 years ago, it was much harsher. Back then, the people who set out on the road to the north were escaping oppression, part of one of the biggest human migrations in modern history. The Great Migration took place over 3 decades in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. About 6 million African Americans moved from the southern United States north to cities like New York, Kansas City, and of course, Chicago. They came for the work, any work, hard work. They settled close to their relatives and friends who had already moved there. Creating a life and a cultural garden, seeded with juke joints, jazz clubs, and house parties, all of which quickly blossomed into the Chicago blues sound.
My folks are from Mississippi, and they migrated from Mississippi. They were part of the Great Migration, and most of the blacks that came from the South, they brought everything they had with them. And in that case, in most cases, everything they had was the clothes on their back, you know, a box of chicken or a bag of lunch, because if they drove, they couldn't stop in different parts of the South coming to the North. They brought their religious beliefs with them, and they brought their music. You know, and then when they got home, just imagine they opened this suitcase with all those things that you can't touch, but you can feel. And then they float around in the house just like it's an air freshener. And it gets trapped in the walls, it gets trapped in the, you know, in the carpet and in the couch. And then their kids come along, and then the kids breathe. So they breathe their religious beliefs, they breathe their music, they breathe the struggle, they breathe, my parents came here for a better life, you know, you take that in.
The country music they unpacked was acoustic, but things changed when the stomp and the strings had to compete with cars and the street.
The Chicago blues sound is just like the stockyards. You know, during those times, you know, the meat packing places, the industrial factories where everything was like boom, bam. That's the Chicago sound. Those sounds in the city are in the music.
As the migrant workers and the blues they brought with them moved north in search of employment, the microphone, electric pickup, and tube amplifier were now electrifying sounds. Arriving musicians, and not just ones named Muddy, plugged in, mic'd it up, and cranked it up.
The electrification changed the parameters of the music, greatly. And, because, hey, it's like you got 50, 60 people drinking and carousing in a bar. It's not like a small juke joint where you can play an acoustic guitar and be heard, okay?
In the Delta, a lone acoustic guitar could ring out under the stars and still be heard. But when it reached Chicago, it went from laid back to hard driving. It went from this to this. When it reached Chicago, the Delta blues found an ever-widening audience, and it changed, becoming louder, brassier, and in your face the way it was never allowed to blossom back in Mississippi.
Blues started by being something new and unexpected and raw and rough and forbidden, and especially to white America, scary and strange and sexual and all the things. Remember what white America was listening to. It was the Letterman and Pat Boone and really some really bad stuff. And then blues came on, and you had these growling black guys just going, rah, and it was like, wow, oh my God, what's that?
The electrified music became a calling. It was also now being recorded on vinyl in recording studios and being sold to an even larger audience. And blues pilgrims from around the world came to learn how to play it.
It had to go across the ocean and come back. You had to have a bunch of guys in Britain say, this is the real deal. This is what I'm going to dedicate my life to. The encyclopedic knowledge of American blues and early rock that people like Mick Jagger have. The command of the minutiae, because when they were teenagers, they learned everything. They read it. And then when Muddy Waters went over to tour with the Stones, and they treated him like a god, and he was sort of like, wow, this is different.
Today, the Chicago blues remains a gigantic magnet, drawing folks to the one place you can still feel that authentic sound. The Pilgrims, musicians like the Stones and the thousands who followed, who found their way to Chicago, had a beacon to follow. Not so the originators. For them, Chicago was freedom from oppression and a job, usually hard jobs. And the blues reflected those hard scrabble lives.
I don't care how you dress up and put on a tuxedo. If you got 6 pieces in your band playing the blues, 25 years, somebody gonna get drunk.
The first big blues star in the big city of Chicago was Big Bill Broonzy. Broonzy, born in the Mississippi, had served in the U.S. Army during World War I. His time in Europe exposed him to a whole raft of new music that he'd never heard before. He was a happy, friendly man who had a knack for hooking up with other talented musicians. He took the country blues that he grew up with and transformed it into a more uptown and sophisticated, electrified sound. It was Big Bill Broonzy who gave McKinley Morganfield, Muddy Waters, a place to stay when he first got to town. It was Broonzy who helped Muddy connect with important contacts like Chess Records. Chess had been distributing what was called race music, recordings from the South made by guys like Chester Burnett, better known as Howlin' Wolf. But the owners of Chess figured out pretty quick that they could make more money by convincing Wolf and Muddy and others to move to Chicago and record exclusively with them. But Chess had an equally important role. Almost by accident, it brought the 3 big Chicago names together: Muddy, Wolf, and a bassist named Willie Dixon. The songwriter, the master manipulator, the man behind the curtain.
Dixon played swing. He played gospel and sang in gospel choirs, and was straight up jazz cats. So when he became the head of recording at Chess Records, he brought this all to traditional down-home blues, which changed it.
Willie Dixon cajoled, tricked, and wheedled McKinley and Chester, Muddy and Howlin, into making the best music of their lives. And all of it was electrified blues.
I'm going down to Louisiana, get me a mojo hand. Straight to Louisiana, get me a mojo hand. I'm gonna have all those good-looking men under my command. Oh yeah, I got my mojo working. I got my mojo working. I got my mojo working. Got my mojo working. Got my mojo working, but it just don't work on you. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf were rivals. A friendly rivalry it had to be. Wolf was a big man with a reputation for beating up musicians who crossed him. And Willie Dixon was the referee, staking out the middle of the ring, bringing them together to shake hands and make music. Meet the man who knew and played with all three. This is Eddie Shaw, another Mississippian who could not resist the siren pull of Chicago. These days, he's one of Chicago's greatest saxophone sidemen, arrangers, and composers. Protege of Muddy Waters, and Howlin' Wolf's main man in the last years of his life. 75 years old and still wailing away. Eddie's tenor sax has been heard playing for everyone from Freddie King and Otis Rush to Eric Clapton. Eddie's story starts simply enough in 1950s Mississippi with a saxophone and a concert by blues legend Muddy Waters.
When the gig was over that night, he said, if you ever need a job in Chicago, you ever want to work, give me a call and I'll make room for you. Anyway, I called him on the phone. Said, it's Shaw, man, I'm from Greenville. He said, yeah, how you doing? Is the gig still open? He said, I'll make room for you like I told you. I said, well, I'm thinking about coming to Chicago. He said, can you be here by next Tuesday? Wow. Now I'm scared, man. I gotta leave home. Have I put my foot in my mouth? And they tell me people is killing people in Chicago and all the dope is going on, man. Am I making a mistake?
Chicago was a tough town. Dozens of clubs scattered up and down the south side. Late nights playing till dawn, rampant substance abuse, fights on the bandstand and on the dance floor. A hard way to make a living, about $40 a night, and even harder to make some good music. And one night, it all became too much for Eddie.
I packed up my horn and I left on the first set, this before Muddy even got there. So when he got to work, I'm gone already. So I got in my car, my auntie gave me an old car, so I went down about 10 blocks down Roosevelt Road, maybe not that far, and where Howlin' Wolf was playing. I'm up there playing with Wolf. Muddy came down to the club. What are you doing here, man? I said, I quit. So he said, well, you owe me $40, man. Give me my $40 if you didn't quit.
Which was the last time Muddy Waters would speak to Eddie for many years. However, Eddie Shaw became very close to Howlin' Wolf. As Wolf's health declined, it was Eddie who made sure he got to gigs, made sure the band was always ready.
You know, you hear different stories about Wolf. He's a big guy, hard to get along with. He beat his musicians up. I never experienced that. With my experience with him, he was one of the best cats in the business. He was firm, though. He was hard, but he had a reason to be hard sometime, man. Do you know how hard 25 years ago to have a blues band? Huh? Somebody gonna get drunk, man. You understand? I don't care how you dress up and put on a tuxedo. If you got 6 pieces in your band playing the blues 25 years, somebody gonna get drunk.
Living and working in Chicago, playing for both Muddy and Howlin' led Eddie to Willie Dixon, the man who got things done, the man who figured out the blues business, while everyone else was just happy to play for scraps.
I love Willie because Willie, I could write good, I could arrange good, but I didn't know about the business per se of than Willie did. Chess Records had a thing they called studio contracts. Anything you record in here belongs to the studio. But Willie told me, he said, Eddie, when you write a tune, go to the country exchange, pay $1 and have it notarized. And you know then, even if you ain't got your publishing together, get it notarized and you know that's your tune because it's been stamped at that date. So Willie taught me a lot about that.
After Howlin' Wolf died in the 1970s, Eddie took over the band, the Wolf Gang, arranged tunes for the likes of Eric Clapton, and worked on his own solo career. Eddie even buried the hatchet with Muddy Waters, arranging his Grammy-nominated album Unkin' Funk. As far as Eddie is concerned, the Chicago blues, the Chicago sound, will keep pulling him back.
This is the center of the blues, you understand? There's no city that you can go in and find many blues out as you can in Chicago. No city.
You are hating the news.
Chicago is the center of the blues now.
The sound that emerged from that center often blasted out of the cheapest instrument in the blues musician's arsenal.
I don't think that many people really have experienced what can come out of such a small thing. So you have this amazing element of surprise.
In the 1820s, the harmonica was developed in Germany and patented in Austria. It was later called the poor man's saxophone. And in the Great Migration that brought so many southern black people north, the harmonica took up almost no room. And the electrified harmonica became one of the main elements of the Chicago sound. They had crummy microphones, the best they could afford, and the distorting tube amps were defining the sound even as they created it. Legendary harmonica player Joe Falisco learned his stuff listening to the great Chicago blues harmonica players. Beginning with one of the first to electrify, John Lee Williamson, also known as Sonny Boy Williamson the First.
John Lee Williamson probably was the real father of the modern blues harmonica sound. It was pretty well established that before he died in 1948, he was already beginning to cup a microphone and play through an amplifier or a PA system in the clubs. The first Sonny Boy Williamson style was a very full, rhythmically driving style that locked into the groove laid down by the guitar player.
Next in line was Sonny Boy's protege, Little Walter, who advanced the sound and changed it again.
Little Walter was the greatest blues harmonica player of all time, due to all the mastery of different styles and all the new things that he brought. His harmonica playing style is sort of like this fusion of that traditional driving, rhythmically driving, big full sound with the horn lines that were popular in the R&B hits of the day.
The final member of the Chicago Blues Holy Trinity of the electrified harp is Rice Miller, who also took the name Sonny Boy Williamson.
Sonny Boy Williamson, Rice Miller, was unquestionably one of the masters, one of the greats of the blues world. Rice Miller didn't even start his recording career until 1951, a number of years after the first Sonny Boy Williamson died, but he was really every bit the accomplished player, songwriter, singer, and maybe even a better showman. He almost came across in a menacing, sort of hypnotic, mesmerizing way to the audience. So it's really him that you would see do more bigger hand gestures.
The sound created by the Sonny Boys and Little Walter has continued to shape the Chicago blues to this very day.
There's just a no-nonsense flavor of Chicago blues that many audiences really crave in much the same way they might crave a regular old cheese and sausage pizza. It's just something that works, and it's proven itself, and you can put other things on it, and yeah, people will like it, but man, there's nothing quite like this. That kind of sound really, I think, connects with people's emotions in a really powerful way.
For nearly half a century, that connecting, grabbing an audience, hooking them like a catfish, has always been the strength of the Chicago sound. And 50 years ago, they connected mostly live and in person. Through the 50s and 60s, the sound of Chicago blossomed in the jazz joints and blues clubs that sprang up all over the south and west sides of the city. Hundreds of them, some not much more than holes in the wall.
Buddy Guy and Junior Wells played a lot here. This was the place, and this was the old Checkerboard Lounge. This is where the Rolling Stones, all those guys came to play here, and Teresa's. King Drive and 48th Street, that's where Teresa's was, the places in the basement. You have two major hubs of black people in Chicago during the 60s because it was so segregated. The South Side, which is this part of town, and the West Side. So sometimes the same act would play on the South Side and then go play on the West Side. because there was this disparity in where people came from. So that's the Sutherland Ballroom. The Sutherland Ballroom was where not only all your major jazz players played, you had blues guys, everyone played here. Plus it was a hotel. So when the entertainers came into town, they would come, because they couldn't stay in the white hotels, they'd have to come to the south side to stay in the hotels. So Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Miles Davis, all the greats, even when they played at different venues, they would have sets here afterwards and that kind of thing. So that's why it's so important in terms of culture and history.
See, Ryder, see what you done. See, Ryder, see what you done. See, Ryder, see what you done. Oh, now you made me love you, but now your gal has come.
This is the commercial business hub of the Black South Side, was 47th Street. People didn't go downtown. Like my mother, they didn't go downtown to shop. They went to 47th Street to shop. So this was also the economic heart of the community.
Ernest grew up about 20 blocks from 47th Street. He remembers as a kid making the pilgrimage on the bus to hear some mighty fine music.
This was South Park then. And I lived on 60th and Michigan, so I could walk to King Drive, and I would catch the, you call it jitney, for like 25 cents or whatever, 13 blocks up here. When I was 8 years old, my people would send me to Sunday school on Sundays, and I wouldn't go to Sunday school or church. I would come to the Rego. So then I would catch the matinee show, which started at 12 o'clock. So you go on the show, you see 2 movies and a stage show, and all for about $2 or $3. And I would come back home and my people would say, "How was church today?" I said, "It was fantastic, you know." It is the cultural center. It's the Harold Washington Cultural Center. The alderwoman, Dorothy Tillman, built this in honor of the blues and R&B. As you see, there's all kind of musical statues there. The saxophone player right there. So this is supposed to be the music row and the homage to the musicians. It was like black downtown because there was a lot of activity going on. There was music, you could hear musicians practicing. Everybody played music. You hear music coming out the houses. You had all kind of vendors, because the vendors had calls. Watermelon. Herbie Hancock, when he wrote the song Watermelon Man, that's where he got the song from, the Watermelon Man. Watermelons, peaches, tomatoes. So you hear all these sounds. There was always some kind of musical activity or some kind of homage to the music. It was blues or jazz or R&B.
The blues clubs are ghost stories, graveyards of lost places, but the sole survivor is the music.
See, Ryder, well, ain't I been good to you? I gave you all my loving. What more could I do? See, Ryder, ain't I been good to you? Oh, well, I gave you all my loving. What more could I do?
For any art form to survive and remain vital, it has to adapt. It has to attract new practitioners. Well, the Chicago sound does just that, even if it ain't always easy.
And I think it must scare them some because some of them get a little teary-eyed and I have to be a little more, sensitive about their sensitiveness.
As the Chicago sound has become more popular around the world, it has become less and less popular at home, especially with kids. But with the guidance of some seasoned blues players, a new generation of young, aspiring blues musicians are writing the next chapter in the story of the Chicago blues, starting in a place they call Blues Camp. Day one of Blues Camp. approximately 100 kids, ranging in age from 7 or 8 right up to 19. They're from all over the United States and even Canada. Every one of them has auditioned to be here. Not all of them are masters of their instruments, far from it. Blues Camp, sort of a boot camp for aspiring blues musicians, was founded 7 years ago by this man, Fernando Jones.
Softer, softer.
What Fernando wanted was a place to impart the sound of his hometown, the Chicago sound.
I've always been the type of person that if something needed to be done, I created it, not because I wanted to create it, but often because it was not there.
An educator, author, and a blues musician himself, Fernando's burning desire to create Blues Camp came out of a single letter from one of his early students.
You saved my life. People think that I'm crazy at school. No one wants to play with me because I play blues. It's almost like I've got to play this and no one understands me, but you gave me hope. And that touched me. And it's like, okay, well, what can I do to bring these misfits together?
The camp unfolds over 5 days on the music campus of Chicago's Columbia University. It's an intense learning experience.
It was fun. I was learning how to work with other people, different communication skills, playing with multiple other guitarists, bass players, lead singers, and it's the first day, so we're all just trying to get to know each other.
Okay, so you and him are gonna be one guitar. Okay.
It's as if getting to know each other meant playing louder and longer than the person next to you. For Chase Walker, the road to the blues started with a recording of Howlin' Wolf that happened to be on the same playlist as a pop song.
I was listening to one song and I switched to the other, and it was a pop song, was the other song. And I remember, I was like, wow, I really want to listen to the other song. I don't like this song. It's just my favorite kind of music.
Chase has traveled from California to Chicago twice now to attend Blues Camp.
It was the most amazing camp I'd ever been to. And I can't ever picture myself not going.
For the next 5 days, the students are separated into groups, assigned a teacher, and begin getting ready for a recital at the end of the week.
I heard someone play a shell once.
Every day includes a master class from a guest musician, in this case, trombonist Steve Toure from the Saturday Night Live Band. Using every trick, including conch shells, he tries to get them to pay attention to each other.
Communication. It's, I'm also teaching them music and the form of the music, but I'm also teaching you how to learn it without having to read it. You have to learn it orally, by ear, the oral tradition, meaning not speaking but listening. Music is like a language. When your mama teaches you to speak, you don't have it written. You learn to read later.
Player after player is brought out to the microphone. He gently coaxes them to listen and respond.
I'm 63 years old. I've been doing it a long time, so it's experience. And I went through that same thing that they're going through when I was coming up.
Second day, The kids are already exhausted, but they're progressing.
I actually feel different. Like my guitar playing, it's a lot looser now. I'm not so overly energetic, overly flashy. It's just slow, take your time. That's what the real blues greats do. Like B.B. King, he cannot go several miles an hour like some of the guys here can, but he means what he plays. A lot of people mean when they say, he means what he plays.
Of course, they still have a way to go.
Okay, who wants to do it? You got a grape. You want to do it?
I'll try.
Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Take your time. Just do it any way you fit it. You don't have to do it the way I do it. I enjoy it with the kids because I had no one to do that for me. So it's a great experience for me as well. I'm learning in the process as well.
These young girls and their bandmates are trying to learn the Jimmy Reed classic, Shame, Shame, Shame.
Okay, I'm not going to
I'll tell you what.
And it's hard, hard, hard.
And sing it. Look at the tree and sing it.
This group is totally green, and some of them are a little frustrated, I guess, with my tone. And I think it must scare them some because some of them get a little teary-eyed, and I have to be a little more, sensitive about their sensitiveness. But they're advancing. Nobody's looking at you. Go ahead.
Shame on you.
There you go. Beautiful. So are you going to need to turn around on Friday from the crowd?
Just pretend like...
Fernando has tapped Chicago stalwarts like Eddie Shaw and pilgrims like Jackie Scott to come and coach, to impart, to gift the sound that changed the world.
The reed's supposed to be even with that mouthpiece.
That's right.
Is it better? All right.
All y'all doing the same thing. If you don't take that breath, when you get to that long note, you're running out of breath and then you go flat. And you start going.
The skies above are blue.
Friday morning, the day of the big recital. Everything and everybody has been loaded on a bus and taken here. Kids who met each other only 5 days ago are now rocking the house. And for the young girls in Nellie Tiger Travis's class, it's the moment of truth.
Shame on you.
There's no shame at Chicago's Blues Camp, where 10-year-old girls can take a Jimmy Reed classic and do it proud. The Chicago sound, the sound that still manages to attract music and musicians to this very day.
A lot of what hip-hop is about identity. And to me, the best hip-hop music is about where you come from, who you are. And with the blues, it's very much about who you are and where you come from. So, what's the future of the Chicago Blues?
The sound that went from country folk to electrified powerhouse, from rock and roll to R&B, from soul to hip hop, keeps on inspiring. And now, the Windy City is host to one possible new road for the blues to travel. This is Uri Lane. Actor, musician, and beatbox harmonica player.
Beatbox is music with your mouth. It's making the sounds of the drum, of a DJ turntable, of a trumpet. It is creating this percussive language using consonants and vowels, your teeth, your lips, your throat, and your diaphragm, and your imagination.
Uri's on a mission, melding hip-hop and the Chicago blues harmonica.
You know, I kind of want to create blues hop because blues and hip-hop are closely related. A lot of what hip-hop is about identity. And to me, the best hip-hop music is about where you come from, who you are. And with the blues, it's very much about who you are and where you come from. You experience it and you try to transcend that through music.
Born and raised in San Francisco, Uri came to Chicago not because he wanted to, but because he had to. It was where the jobs were. But once he was here, he was immediately attracted to Chicago's thriving blues scene.
I was just floored and amazed by the musicianship and this being a place, one of the homes of the blues. And then I became friends with a local harmonica player here, and we would start to jam. And he would say, all right, take out the harmonica. Now just beatbox. Okay, now just play the harmonica. And that was a challenge for me, just to play the harmonica.
Uri says the sounds of the city have influenced his music just as they did so many years ago when the first blues musicians came north.
It's like kind of city delta, you know? It's got the country, but it's also got that gritty city, the sounds that, you know, maybe it was the railroad, right? Back and here, it's the sounds of the CTA. It's the sounds of the trains, it's the sounds of the city, the people, downtown.
Uri's hope is that people who left the blues, the people who created the sound, may find their way back through the beatbox harmonica.
African Americans were not playing that music because that's like old people music. That's country music. So, but that country music is what really is, to me, I mean, it's pure. And it's raw. It's raw music. It is from your heart, from the soul within you. It's this powerful sound that comes just really from the imagination comes from the rhythm inside you.
Finding that internal rhythm, finding the beat of the electrified sound, finding the raw, hard, driving edge of the Chicago blues, it's an unending journey. Like Jackie Scott's irresistible need to travel to Chicago, Eddie Shaw's destiny to find the musical truth, and even for the kids of blues camp, the sound of Chicago continues to be a magnet. Look at Sugar Blue, a guy who began his musical journey in New York, moved to Paris, playing with the Stones. He too could not resist the call to go to Chicago, playing with the legendary Willie Dixon.
He took the time to show me how to use my instrument to be able to fit my concepts into his music. But the root of the music remained the same. That's the thing that Dixon always told me. He said, man, the blues is the roots. The rest of the music are the fruits. He said, you gotta maintain the root or else the branches will die.
came to Chicago and got electrified. Chester and McKinley, they took us for a ride. When the blues came to Chicago and got electrified. Sooner or